good afternoon, or good morning or good evening, depending on where you are. Welcome to today's webinar, What Every Data Leader Should Know About Third-Party Data for AI and Analytics. My name is Mary Lennon. I'm a senior sales engineer at Precisely, and I'm going to be your MC. But I wanted to share a little bit about myself before we get started. I'm actually relatively new to Precisely, but I come with 13 years of experience in industry where I've held roles such as a GIS technician, a data scientist, and a modeling and analytics manager. And I've worked across or in multiple different industries. I've worked in public sector, transportation, energy, retail, and financial services. And in every step of the way, I have used geospatial data and analytics. So I'm hoping that my experiences help to give a practical perspective on how to drive smarter data decisions and help you with your own AI journeys. So before we get started, a few housekeeping notices. If you have any questions, please type them into the questions section. And if we have time, I will answer them, or somebody will follow up. And this session is being recorded, so the materials will be made available to you afterward. So during our time together, I'm going to talk to you about a few things. We're going to start with where current companies are getting started with their own AI journeys. We're going to talk about data integrity and the importance of it. I'm going to provide you information about Precisely's connected data ecosystem. We're going to have an empathetic moment, though, before that for the pain of onboarding third-party data. I'm going to share a cautionary tale as well as a success story for other companies' AI journeys. And I'm going to do a quick demo. So we have a really busy agenda, or a really packed agenda. So I want you to have patience with me at the beginning where I pontificate, or maybe for some of you where I talk about things that are maybe very much so important parts of your daily life and workflow, but that context, once we get to the point of looking at these third-party data sets and enrichment, which is something we're going to talk about, is really important. And context is going to be the theme of today's webinar. So first, let me set the stage for you. And I want to ask you a question. What are you focused on today? Right now, it probably is the image in front of you on your screen. And I probably have two different sets of reactions here. One is, why am I looking at survivorship bias? And the other one is probably wondering, what is survivorship bias? But given the title of today's webinar, I suspect that we probably do have data scientists, analysts, as well as people with some kind of statistics background or familiarity on the call. But bear with me. I think that we should explain what survivorship bias is for the benefit of everybody. And I want to talk about it in the context of today's webinar. So survivorship bias is the mistake of focusing on only what succeeded, like the bomber planes returning from missions in World War II, while ignoring what failed. So in World War II, when bomber planes returned from missions, engineers would assess them. They initially thought, I need to reinforce areas of these planes that showed damage on returning or upon return. So why were they focused on this? They were thinking about, how can I think about reinforcing, strengthening, armoring up the parts of the plane that sustained damage, so that way I can ensure a greater likelihood of survival for the next generation of bomber planes that are going to be built with this enforcement and armor that will go out on their own missions. But the real insights actually came from asking, where were the planes hit that didn't come back? Because that's where the armor was truly needed. And that may not have always been where those same engineers were seeing damage on the planes that had returned. So in AI, we often celebrate flashy success stories. Those are models that perform well, dashboards that look great, workflows that automate. But we need to ask ourselves what didn't work, what failed quietly or maybe loudly, and what data was missing, because that's where the risk lies, and that's where we need to armor up. So armor or armoring up means profiling and cleaning data to catch what's missing. We want to avoid bias. We want to enrich with third-party data to fill gaps and reduce blind spots. And we want to track lineage and add metadata to understand how the data evolves. These are all things that Precisely has insights into, but today we are focusing on enriching with third-party data to fill gaps and reduce blind spots. So where is your organization spending time? 91% of leading businesses have ongoing investments in artificial intelligence. They're often investing in things like chatbots, assistants, workflows, recommendations, and foundational model training. But let's revisit that survivorship bias example. Are we only focusing on the visible wins? Are we overlooking foundational elements like data? Is your organization making critical investments into data itself? Is that data complete, reliable, and trustworthy? And is it providing a complete picture? Because often first-party data has gaps and biases. And reliable, trustworthy data isn't just a nice to have, it's the difference between insight and error. And inaccurate data can result in false model responses. Incomplete, poor quality data can lead to hallucinations. And for those of you who may be newer to your own AI journeys, the use of the word hallucinations in this context may be confusing. So hallucinations are when AI models make something up. That means they provide false information. This is because it's guessing based on patterns it's learned. Data has a strong impact on these hallucinations. It's garbage in, garbage out. If you don't have good context, then you may not provide a good result. So when we talk about data that is clean, reliable, and trustworthy, we are talking about data integrity. To make sure you have data integrity, you want to make sure that you have data that is for critical things. You want to make sure that it's complete, that it's credible, that it's contextual, and that it's connected. And we're going to dive into each of these. So all of the relevant data elements to answer a specific business or analytical question are what is meant by, what does it mean for data to be complete? It's about having the right information when you need it. And this helps to minimize bias, improve accuracy, and enhance understanding of modeled outputs. Credible data means data that is accurate. It reflects reality and is free from errors, or as free from errors as it can possibly be, and that it is consistent and fit for purpose. So to me, this goes hand in hand with the concept of reliability. The data needs to be trusted to support the business questions and processes that it was intended to be used for. And this improves trust in the results, which enables more confident decision making. And contextual. This means adding relevance to existing data. This is the why behind the numbers. This is where the enrichment with third-party data happens. This is how you build better models with more information that can improve confidence in their use and how the outputs are going to be used. So contextual data helps us to reduce operational risk by enabling smarter decisions. So I'll give you an example. A sudden change in home values for a community could seem unexplainable. But if you align it with some contextual information, like the footprint for a current natural hazard, perhaps it's been near a recent hurricane or wildfire, it becomes easier to understand. A different example is, say that foot traffic for an existing business goes down, but you look into the surrounding community and you see that there are road closures near the business and that the existing customer base is currently being detoured another way. It could be that this is just an outlier in the business's current practices and that they will soon see an uptick in customers once that road work is done. And connected. That means data that can be linked in a way that makes it accessible and able to be enriched and analyzed easily. So enrichment is enhancing data by appending trusted context onto it. And I'll provide you some examples of contextual data in a bit in case if that sounded like too much of a word salad. But connecting data is really about creating an ecosystem where disparate data sets can be joined together seamlessly. So before I get into talking about examples of what contextual data are and how they can benefit you in your AI journey, I want to start with a cautionary tale. And so with our survivorship bias lens on, we should ask ourselves, what happens when we focus on only the newest advancements, capabilities, architectures, tools, but we don't pay attention to our most vulnerable parts like the data? And this happened just a few years ago at a large prop tech company that I want to talk you through. So this company acquired a large volume of homes that were identified by its proprietary model as being undervalued and potentially profitable for resale. However, the model for valuing the buying of these homes was inaccurate in a rapidly changing market, and it resulted in significant financial losses. They lost an estimated $3 billion on operations in a single quarter. And once they announced these struggles, they had a decline in stock of nearly 17%. So this led to a lot of scrutiny and questions about the overall error rate of this model and where those errors came from. And the error rate was anywhere between 50 to 80%. But what had happened was that they had overestimated the demand for these homes in that model, and they had also underestimated the renovation costs. So this caused them to buy too many homes at inflated prices, and they struggled to sell them at a profit later. So this isn't meant to discourage you from pursuing your own AI initiatives. Honestly, this is quite the opposite. When thoughtfully crafted, deployed, and maintained, AI can deliver significant value. But more complete and contextual data underlying the models could have changed this tale from a loss to a success. All right, so before we dive into talking about contextual data and examples of some of the contextual data that Precisely has, I want to take that moment of empathy for how difficult it can be to onboard third-party data. In my own experiences, there were a lot of steps along the way to bring value, and this roadmap here only shows a subset of them. And to me and the experiences I've had, this roadmap here would take at least 6 to 12 months of work. And under that license piece of the roadmap and dollar sign, there were additional steps like identifying the data that you wanted, assessing that data, onboarding the vendor, working with procurement, working with legal, and sometimes there are separate technology selection processes or model risk governance or model risk management stages that need to be considered in here too. But it was at that point then that you could even consider ingesting and transforming data across multiple environments, including multiple levels of QC, then integrating into upstreams and downstreams, making sure that the data was stored into those separate ecosystems if they needed to be for the upstreams and downstreams. And only then could you even begin to think about testing and training a model. And 79% of leaders are reporting that they need a faster onboarding timeline to help them meet business demands. And when we get to that testing and training step, and this whole current roadmap up to test and train, I would say is the 6 to 12 months by itself, is that testing and training has its own time associated with it. And 70% of that time may be spent by an analyst or multiple analysts analyzing and preparing that data for analysis before it can even go into the model. So these timelines easily go out beyond a year, depending on the organization that you work for. So we all know that third-party data is valuable, but integrating it should not be this hard. There are ways to cut down this timeline and make things easier. And at Precisely, we've built a connected data ecosystem that brings these insights into reach. We can't eliminate the steps that an organization requires for onboarding data, but we can make the process simpler once it's within your ecosystem. So we use a unique ID architecture where we link thousands of attributes across properties, businesses, locations, and demographics that are all ready to be tapped into with one connection. And Precisely, we offer data on everything from addresses to details about the properties themselves, the parcel that they sit on, perhaps the ownership related to it, characteristics about the property, like the number of beds and baths within the structure, ownership details, as well as information surrounding it. What are the streets nearby that location? Are there any risks to that location? Is it in a flood zone? Does it have wildfire risk or earthquake risk? What kind of boundaries surround that location? What is its census tract or census block identifier? What county is it in? What state? But also more bespoke things like territories and more. Who are the people that live in an area? What are their demographics and segments of those to help you better target your customers of your own model products or data? What other places are nearby? These are places like your local grocery stores, your gyms, your coffee shops, places of leisure, and more. And then the types of people that frequent those locations. What are their habits like? How often are they frequenting this location? What are their visitation behaviors like once they're there? And all of this information is served in whatever way is easiest for you to consume it. But these relationships don't stop at Precisely's own data products. They extend to partnerships with multiple providers. There are connections to Dun & Bradstreet to link in business and firmographic information. Many customers already use Regrid and Overture Maps for other locational information, including parcels and buildings. That information can be enriched via this relationship with additional details from Precisely, such as foot traffic, natural hazard risk, demographics, and much more. And there are also relationships with GeoX for additional information related to real estate assessments, such as roof condition. So now that we've overviewed all this data, let's look at an example of how they can come together to transform a company's AI initiatives. Generali Real Estate is an international real estate investment and asset management company, and they manage more than 37 billion in assets. Their challenge was that 60% of the change in property values over 7 years wasn't explainable using traditional real estate metrics. So what did they do? They brought together 800 plus variables on sociodemographics, places or points of interest, consumer behavior, mobility, and much more, along with over 30 machine learning models to create City Forward, which is a leading European real estate location intelligence platform. So what was the result then, beyond just having a platform with information? It was an average model accuracy of 95%. That means that the platform can reliably explain and predict asset value changes that traditional metrics had missed. So I hope you all have a success like Generali. And before we go today, I'm aware that we are a software and data company, and I am a spatial data geek, and that I feel that it would be a miss, and you all would be missing it if I didn't do a demo. So I want to show you the power and completeness of the data we have for a common address. This is to help show the amount of context that you can get from a connected ecosystem to help you power your own AI efforts. And so I want to start with Park Laurel condominiums. I have an image here from Google Street Map. It's their street level view of this building. And it's their luxury condos on the Upper West Side of New York. And they have wonderful views of Central Park and a city skyline and river. And it's just a really nice area to walk around. And we're going to dive into Park Laurel condominiums in one of our tools in just a second. But the first thing I want to anchor you to before we switch to that view is that long string at the top of the purple dot, that P000GL. That is the unique identifier, the precisely ID that's going to start us off on our journey. With that, let's dive in. This interface allows me to show you a variety of different enrichment data sets that we have available. With that, let's dive in. This interface is going to allow me to show you a variety of different enrichment data points that we have that are accessible from just having that unique identifier for that Park Laurel condominiums property. We are able to get not only a standardized address and real-world coordinates, but we are able to link that location to its associated building and parcel footprint. We don't just want spatial data that we need to intersect ourselves. We want information that's pre-enriched. And there are a variety of different data sets by which to do that, as I showed you earlier. For property attributes, this is a subset of about 9,000 that we have available internally between tax assessment, deed records, mortgage, and MLS. But for this building that the condominiums reside in, we can see the number of square feet, the number of stories it is, and the year it was built. Importantly, a relationship can be established between the root address for the condominium building and each of the different condo units that fall within it, each with their own unique identifier. If we click through on a given tiled address, as we call them, because it relates to that root address for the condo complex, we can see information that's specific to that condo unit. We can see that it's 3 bedrooms and 4 bathrooms, and we can see a more recent sale value. But whether it be for the root address or a child, we can also see other information. We can see what types of neighborhoods it's associated with, and there are a variety of different ways that a community can be defined. We can look at everything from a macro level community, like talking about Upper Manhattan in New York, to something more specific, like the neighborhood of the Upper West Side. We can also link to information such as the parcel identifier or the building footprint ID should you need to move beyond the spatial boundaries on the map. But let's dive into the other specifics. There's not only census demographic information available, of which, again, this is only a subset. For example, in this community, we can see 50% of this location is associated with having no vehicles available to a household, not surprising in New York. But we can look at other types of demographic information for a community. For example, the site segment that we would associate this property with is called downtown hustle. And these categorizations of different demographic details help for useful connection points with existing customers and looking for lookalike markets and much more. So we can see that for downtown professional hustle, that the majority of the adult population is aged 50 plus. We can see that there's a lot of rented properties and that there's a high presence of condos and apartments. But there are many more details than this too. We can see what the risk profile for this location is. We can see that it falls in a flood zone that's considered X, that's the 500-year flood zone. We can see what its associated hurricane, hail, wind, and tornado risk is, along with its earthquake and coastal risks. But usefully, especially in a New York neighborhood, such as the Upper West Side, there's going to be a mix of residential and commercial businesses. Notably, next door to our primary address are a number of other residential properties, as well as some commercial properties. We can see a list of what these different business entities are nearby, and we can see what their average sales usually are. We can get more information about the businesses and the buildings, how many are residential versus mixed and other. And for those that have businesses, such as the YMCA next door, which also has a gourmet go-to-market business falling within the same business, we can see details about whether the business is open and closed, how many visits it receives, as well as whether it's a chain or not. But again, this is only a subset of our different visitation data. So this is just a quick look at one property that we have to show you how easily these different enrichment sets can come together. Notably, I showed this to you in a useful UI that was quick and easy for demo purposes, but connecting everything really is as easy as bringing together everything with this unique Precisely ID within the Precisely connected data ecosystem. All right. I know the mix of all the content at the beginning and that demo has us very close to time, if not just at it right now. So I want to talk to you about the Precisely data portfolio experience and a few wrap-up materials. So Precisely has a comprehensive global data portfolio with an ecosystem of connected data sets, as I showed you today. We're able to streamline enrichment and connectivity using a unique ID in that system. And that extends to connecting to a number of our other partners, such as GeoX and Overture, as well, DUNS, and more. We have flexible options for data delivery and deployment, and our solutions help turn addresses into strategic assets. So considerations to have when you're working with third-party data for AI and analytics are if that data is complete, credible, contextual, and connected. And this slide here shows you some questions that you can ask yourself about each of those categories. Does the data set cover all relevant entities, all the properties or customers and locations that you need, or is it just a subset? Does that coverage change with time? Does it vary across geography? How is the data sourced? Can the data be sampled? How are accuracy, precision, and data quality measured? How do the data attributes provided match the coverage that you need? Does the data fully align with your own business goals? What other data sets can that data connect to with ease? Are there any dependencies and requirements when linking to other data sets, and many more? So I ask you, I want to take you back to our survivorship bias example. What are you going to focus on tomorrow? Survivorship bias is the mistake of only focusing on what succeeded, like those bombers that returned from missions in World War II, while ignoring what failed. Initially, in World War II, the engineers thought to reinforce the areas that showed damage on the returning planes. But the real insight came from asking, where were the planes hit that didn't come back? Because that is where the armor is truly needed. So we talked about those flashy success stories, the dashboards, the workflows, the automations. And perhaps sometimes it seems that those are the areas that are the most vulnerable and that need the armor. But we would argue that data is one of the more vulnerable parts of your existing AI ecosystem that continues to need work and attention. You want to make sure that your data is complete, credible, contextual, and connected. So I hope that you enjoyed your time today. I hope you've learned a lot more about enriching your data sets, connected data ecosystems, and have a lot of thoughts about how to strengthen the armor of your own AI journey. And I hope that we see you again. With that, I know I only have time for just a few more questions. So I'm going to answer about 2 or 3 of these, and we'll take the rest of them offline. But one of the questions was, how do you deliver or make the data that you've pre-linked available? And how can I access it? Okay. The data is available on premises, API, and via a variety of cloud solutions. If you contact us at the contact information I send along next, we can have somebody walk you through each of those, but we're able to connect you to data. We can bring our data into your ecosystem however it's best serviced, and we can help you connect from our data to your own, however it best works for you within your own environment. I'm interested in testing some of your data. Can I do that? Yes, our data is available for testing. We have something called the Precisely Data Experience. And via the same mechanisms I'm about to show you, you can get in touch to use that tool. And you demonstrated a few partners in your data linking. I have some data from those partners. How do I connect to your data sets? So that's awesome. If you have data from one of our partners, we have connection-based IDs, and those are what allow you to connect with the partnership data. And that's something that we can also connect you to via the information I'm about to send through. So I want to thank you so much for your time. This was a wonderful experience. I hope to see you in more webinars. And again, keep thinking about your contextual and connected data. And we hope that you contact us soon. Thank you for helping us let you support your AI goals. Have an excellent rest of your day.